A lot of men grow up believing women want manly men, confident, tough, a little emotionally distant, the kind of guy who never really looks back. And for decades, that's exactly what movies told us attraction looked like. Tony Stark, James Bond, Christian Grey, cool, charming, untouchable, men written by and for other men. And somewhere along the way, that became the standard. If you wanted to be desirable, you had to perform it. But lately, something's been changing. Films written by women, or told through women's eyes, have started showing a completely different kind of attraction. One that doesn't scream but listens, that doesn't dominate but understands. That's the female gaze of attraction. The female gaze doesn't just flip who's looking, it changes what it means to look. It's not about power, but perception. It's how stories told through women redefine desire, not as control, but as connection. And as a guy, it's fascinating to watch what these films find attractive because it's not about perfect hair or power or confidence, it's about empathy, safety, curiosity, and emotional honesty. So in this video, I want to explore what the female gaze teaches us about attraction through the characters that embody it. Characters who aren't perfect but present, who aren't distant but real. Let's start with the man who made emotional messiness look charming, Nick Miller. Nick Miller isn't the kind of guy Hollywood usually tells us to look up to. He's broke, lazy, emotionally messy, and his idea of a romantic gesture is remembering to put on pants before leaving his room. But somehow, he's still one of the most loved male characters in modern TV. And that's exactly why he's the perfect place to start. Because Nick Miller represents a shift in what we find attractive, one that perfectly captures the female gaze of authenticity. In traditional media, men are taught that attraction comes from performance. Be confident, be smooth, be the guy who never hesitates. But Nick, he's the complete opposite of that. He's awkward, confused, and constantly second-guessing himself. And the show doesn't mock him for it, it embraces him. Under the female gaze, Nick isn't desirable because he's cool. He's desirable because he's real. He listens, he cares, he feels. His attraction doesn't come from dominance, it comes from comfort. One of the best examples of this is how the camera treats him. When Nick interacts with Jess, it doesn't zoom in on the smirk or the body language. It lingers on connection. The small silences, the glances that last a bit too long, the moments where you can almost feel the nervous energy between them. Attraction isn't played as spectacle, it's played as sincerity. There's a specific scene that perfectly captures this. When Jess tells Nick she's scared of ruining what they have, and instead of charming his way through it or brushing it off like most cool guys would, he stops. You see him process it. You see him hold that fear with her instead of trying to fix it. And that's the female gaze at work, finding romance not in confidence, but in care. Nick Miller shows that you don't have to be perfect to be magnetic. You just have to be emotionally available enough to be known. And that's what makes him such a refreshing, kind of attractive, because he doesn't make you want to chase him. He makes you want to trust him. And that trust, that ability to connect without needing to perform, is exactly what we see next, but in a completely different form of love. Not messy, not funny, but deeply respectful. Let's talk about Laurie from Little Women. Laurie is the kind of man who could have easily been written as another charming, privileged love interest, handsome, witty, the boy every girl wants. But in Little Women, 2019, Greta Gerwig reshapes him into something softer, more self-aware, a version of attraction that lives not in conquest, but in respect. When Laurie falls in love with Joe, it's not because she's quiet or graceful or traditionally feminine, it's because she's free. She talks too much, dreams too big, laughs too loud, and he loves every part of that. He doesn't try to tame her fire, he simply wants to stand close enough to feel its warmth. That's what makes his love story so different. It's built on admiration, not control. In the hands of a male gaze story, Laurie's rejection would make him bitter. the nice guy who didn't get the girl. But under Gerwig's direction, the camera never paints him as a victim. It lingers on understanding. We see the pain on his face when Joe turns him down, yes, but we also see acceptance. He doesn't guilt her, chase her, or demand closure. He listens. Because real love under the female gaze isn't about getting what you want. It's about honoring what the other person needs. There's something quietly heartbreaking about that scene. The way he looks at her, not with anger, but with tenderness. He loves her fully, but he loves her right. And that's the part of Laurie that so many men overlook. He represents attraction that isn't rooted in power, but in equality. What makes Laurie so magnetic is that he doesn't just see Joe, he understands her. He doesn't fall for a fantasy, he falls for a person. And even after she chooses a different path, he never stops believing in her. That's the female gaze at work again, showing us that the most romantic gesture isn't a confession or a kiss. It's the willingness to let someone be exactly who they are, even if that means they walk away. But respect isn't the only foundation of attraction. There's another layer, the quiet, unspoken safety that makes love possible in the first place. And no story captures that better than Connell from Normal People. Connell isn't the loudest man in the room. He's not confident in the way movies usually teach men to be. He hesitates when he speaks. He struggles to make eye contact. But somehow, the way he moves, the way he listens, the way he cares, it all feels magnetic. Because attraction through the female gaze isn't always loud. Sometimes it's in the silence. Normal People is one of the purest portrayals of intimacy I've ever seen. And it's not because of what's said, it's because of what isn't. Every touch, every pause, every breath feels intentional. The camera doesn't linger on bodies, it lingers on trust. We see how he reaches for her hand slowly, almost asking for permission without words. The female gaze makes that hesitation beautiful. There's this moment in the series when Marianne tells Connell she feels safe with him. And the power of that line isn't just what it means to her, it's what it reveals about him. Because for Connell, being desired isn't about being dominant. It's about being gentle enough to be trusted. That's not weakness, that's strength, the kind that doesn't need to prove itself. What's so beautiful about Normal People is how it frames attraction as mutual vulnerability. Both characters are stripped of ego. They hurt each other, they misunderstand each other, but the camera never turns them into stereotypes. No one's the savior, no one's the villain. It's two people learning how to love without losing themselves, and that's what makes it feel real. Through Connell, the female gaze shows that love isn't always fireworks. Sometimes it's the quiet assurance that you're safe, even when you're breaking apart. That the most attractive thing about someone isn't how they look or what they say. It's how they make you feel in the silence between words. And speaking of silence, no story uses it better than Pride and Prejudice. Because in that film, attraction doesn't just live in dialogue or touch. It lives in restraint. So let's talk about Mr. Darcy and the beauty of emotional depth. Few characters have captured the female gaze quite like Mr. Darcy. He barely speaks, rarely smiles, and yet every movement, every glance feels like it's carrying the weight of an entire love story. He's the definition of emotional repression, but under the female gaze, that restraint isn't cold. It's devastatingly human. In Pride and Prejudice, Darcy's attraction to Elizabeth isn't painted as possession. It's self-discovery. Every time he looks at her, we see the conflict between pride and tenderness, status and sincerity. He doesn't know how to express it, and that's what makes it so powerful. Because the female gaze doesn't need a declaration. It finds romance in hesitation. It finds meaning in the struggle to be honest. When he finally confesses his love, awkward, trembling, utterly vulnerable, it's not framed as a power move. The camera doesn't glorify him, it humanizes him. His voice shakes, his words falter. You can almost feel him realizing in real time that loving someone means surrendering the version of himself that the world expects him to be. Under the male gaze, power and confidence are attractive because they control emotion. Under the female gaze, they're attractive because they surrender to it. Darcy's restraint isn't pride, it's fear. Fear of being known, fear of being rejected, fear of being seen. And when he finally lets Elizabeth see him, not as a perfect man, but as a vulnerable one, that's when we fall in love with him too. There's a reason that hand flex scene in the 2005 adaptation became iconic. It's not overtly romantic, not even sexual, it's micro-emotional. The camera doesn't cut away. It lets you sit in that split second of human connection, the physical echo of something neither of them can put into words. That's what the female gaze captures so well. Attraction that doesn't demand attention, it invites empathy. Mr. Darcy is proof that desire doesn't have to be loud to be powerful. It can live in silence, in a glance, in a trembling hand, in the quiet realization that love, at its purest, is about being seen and still being chosen. But attraction isn't only about how we see others, it's also about how we begin to see ourselves. And no movie explores that idea more honestly than Lady Bird. So let's talk about self-discovery, desire, and the way the female gaze redefines what it means to be wanted. If every story so far has been about how women see men, Lady Bird is about how women learn to see themselves. At first, Lady Bird doesn't really know what she wants, only what she's told she should want. She wants romance, popularity, adventure, all the movie version promises of what growing up is supposed to feel like. But none of it ever fits. Every crush ends in disappointment. Every dream feels smaller when it finally comes true. Because Lady Bird isn't about falling in love with someone else. It's about realizing that attraction starts with knowing who you are when no one's watching. Greta Gerwig directs Lady Bird through the same lens she uses in Little Women, raw, warm, and deeply human. The camera doesn't beautify her mistakes or dramatize her heartbreak. It simply observes her becoming. We watch her chase love, mess it up, and outgrow it. Not because the love was meaningless, but because it served its purpose. Every failed romance teaches her something new about what she values, what she deserves, and who she wants to be. And that's where the female gaze becomes something bigger than attraction. It's not just about how we look at love, it's about how love helps us look at ourselves. When Lady Bird finally steps into adulthood, she doesn't end with a boy or a grand romantic gesture. She ends with understanding, the kind that comes quietly. When she calls her mom, when she admits she misses home, when she forgives herself for wanting more. That's the moment the audience realizes she's not chasing validation anymore. She's finally at peace with being seen by herself. The female gaze of attraction isn't just about desire between people. It's about the journey from seeking love to becoming lovable. Because when you understand yourself, your flaws, your fears, your wants, attraction stops. Being about impressing someone, it becomes about connecting honestly. And that's what ties every story we've talked about together. Nick's vulnerability, Laurie's respect, Connell's safety, Darcy's depth, and Lady Bird's self-discovery. They all show us that attraction under the female gaze isn't about perfection, it's about presence. It's not about the fantasy of being wanted, it's about the reality of being known. So, let's close with the truth that all of these stories circle back to. The difference between how attraction is shown to us and how it feels within us. The truth about the male and female gaze. The male gaze and the female gaze aren't enemies, they're languages. Two different ways of seeing the same thing. Connection. The male gaze builds attraction through distance. It's about the chase, the mystery, the performance. It creates icons, confident, untouchable, framed to be admired. And for decades, that became the only way we thought love was supposed to look. But the female gaze slows it down. It steps closer. It isn't interested in control. It's interested in understanding. Where the male gaze looks at beauty from the outside, the female gaze feels it from the inside. It asks different questions. Do I feel safe? Can I trust this person? Do they see me the way I see them? And that's why movies written through women's eyes feel different. They don't teach you how to be attractive. They show you why people fall in love in the first place. It's not about appearance, it's about awareness. It's not about dominance, it's about reciprocity. It's not about fantasy, it's about truth. The female gaze doesn't just reshape desire, it redefines strength. Because strength isn't stoicism or control, it's empathy, it's patience. It's the ability to care deeply and still stay kind. The kind of strength that Nick, Laurie, Connell, Darcy, and Lady Bird all quietly share. Maybe that's the lesson these stories are trying to teach us, that attraction, at its core, isn't about being irresistible. It's about being real, about letting yourself be seen, fully, and still daring to reach for someone anyway. Because the female gaze reminds us that love doesn't always look cinematic. Sometimes, it's just two people trying to understand each other, slowly, honestly, and without performance. And maybe that's the most attractive thing of all.